My Ford F-150 rattled to a stop at the end of the driveway. I killed the engine, grabbed my lunch pail, and stepped out into the humid Georgia evening. The air smelled like cut grass and somebody's barbecue 3 houses down. Then I saw the cruisers. 2 of them, black and white, parked right in front of my ranch house like they owned the place. Light bars off, but the antennas still quivered. My stomach dropped. I ran through every possible reason in 3 seconds. Speeding ticket, a break-in, somebody hit my mailbox again. Then I saw the casket that had sat in the middle of my front yard, right where I'd mowed last Saturday. Silver, long gleaming in the orange sunset, like a bad dream made metal. A hearse idled at the curb behind the cruisers, and a man in a black suit leaned against the hood, smoking. I dropped my lunch pail. Apples rolled across the gravel. Frank. My wife's voice. I turned. Evelyn stood on the porch, her hands shaking, holding out a pen and a clipboard full of papers. Her face was the color of old milk. She wore her gardening jeans and a faded t-shirt, like she'd been watering roses when the nightmare arrived. "Don't say a word," she whispered. "Just sign." I blinked. "Sign what?" She stepped down off the porch, grabbing my arm. Her fingers dug in like claws. "Frank, please. Not now. Just sign it. I'll explain everything. I swear." "What is it?" I pulled the clipboard from her hands. The top page was titled Affidavit of Identification and Release of Remains. My name stared back at me in bold letters. Frank Allen Morrison. Date of birth. Social security number. Below that, one word. Deceased. I started laughing. It came out ragged and too loud. "I'm dead. I'm standing right here, Evelyn. Look at me. I'm not dead." The officer on the porch stepped forward. Big man, shaved head, dark sunglasses even though the sun was low. He moved like he owned the ground. His name tag read Klein. "Mr. Morrison," he said, his voice flat and oily. "We found a body in a burned vehicle off Route 9. Wallet and ID belong to you. We need a family member to sign for release of the remains." "Remains?" I looked at the casket. "There's nothing in there." "There's a body, sir," Klein said, "and we need the paperwork." I turned back to Evelyn. Her eyes were wet, but not with grief. Fear. I'd been married to her for 14 years. I knew the difference. "Evelyn, what the hell is going on?" She grabbed my hand and squeezed hard. Her voice was a razor blade. "If you don't sign, they'll take you in. They'll say you're impersonating a dead man. They'll seize the house. Everything. Please. Just this once, trust me." I looked at the casket. I looked at Klein. I looked at the hearse driver, who hadn't moved, just watched me through a haze of cigarette smoke. The neighbors were outside now. Mrs. Patterson with her labradoodle. Mr. Chun pretending to check his mail. All of them staring. I signed. My hand didn't shake. My hand just moved, like it belonged to someone else. I scribbled my name on the line, and Klein took the clipboard with a nod. "Thank you," he said, and walked back to the cruisers. The hearse driver flicked his cigarette into the street and got behind the wheel. They pulled away, one after the other, and the street went quiet. Evelyn pulled me inside and slammed the door. I stood in the hallway, still holding the pen. The AC kicked on, cold air hitting my sweaty neck. "Talk to me." She walked past me into the kitchen, poured herself a glass of whiskey, and knocked it back like water. Her hand trembled when she set the glass down. "I got a call this morning. A woman. She said you were dead. She said they found your body in a car." "Who was she?" "I don't know. She didn't give a name. She said if I didn't cooperate, they'd file fraud charges and take the house. She said they had pictures." I leaned against the counter and pressed my palms flat against the cold linoleum. "Pictures of what?" She wouldn't meet my eyes. "A body. Burned. With your wallet." My throat closed up. I thought about the freight yard, the double shifts, the sweat and diesel. 18 years of that, and now some stranger had my name on a pile of ash. "Who's in that casket?" I asked. "I don't know." She said it too fast. I knew her tells. She only talked fast when she was lying. But I didn't push. My head was still spinning. I walked to the back door and looked out at the yard. The casket was gone, but I could see the flattened grass where it had been. A rectangle of dead green, stamped into the lawn. That was when I noticed the note. A piece of paper, folded and tucked into the doorframe. I pulled it open. Block letters, cut from a magazine, glued onto plain white stock. "You're dead, Frank. Stay dead, or we'll make it real." I read it 3 times. The words didn't change. My pulse hammered in my ears. I walked back inside, and held the note up. "Did you know about this?" Evelyn looked at it, and for half a second, her face went completely blank. Then she shook her head. No, but she'd known something. I could feel it in the way she wouldn't hold my gaze, the way her hands stayed jammed in her pockets. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay next to her in our bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment. The call, the casket, the cops, her voice whispering, "Just sign." My signature on the paper that said I was dead. Around 3 a.m., I got up and opened the laptop on my desk. I logged into our shared bank account. Zero. Every dollar was gone. Savings. Checking. The emergency fund I'd built for years. Even the small retirement account I'd kept from my last job. All cleaned out 2 days ago, transferred to an account I'd never seen. I closed the laptop and walked to the garage. Behind the water heater, I had a small safe. I spun the combination and opened it. Passports were there. The deed to the house was there. But the cash, the $300 I kept for emergencies, was gone. In its place was a key. A storage unit key with a tag that read Lockwood Self-Storage, Unit A, 12. I drove there before dawn. The place was on the edge of town, past the railroad tracks, all corrugated metal and padlocks. Unit A, 12 was at the far end, beneath a flickering fluorescent light. I slid the key in and lifted the door, but the smell hit me first. Cigarette smoke, mildew, cheap perfume. Inside was a folding table and a box. I opened the box. Pictures. Dozens of pictures. Evelyn with a man I'd never seen. Dark hair, tall, crooked smile. They were at a hotel pool, in a restaurant, parked in a car. Her hand on his knee, his mouth near her ear. I flipped faster. Receipts. A motel in Reno. Plane tickets to Cancun. A lease agreement for an apartment in the next county, signed by someone named Marcus Delaney. Bank statements. A joint account I didn't know existed. Deposits from my paycheck, my actual paychecks, were being funneled into it every week. 50%. For 2 years. I did the math on my phone. Over $60,000. And there were payments. Regular payments to a name I recognized. V. Klein. Victor Klein. The officer on my porch. I leaned against the storage unit wall and closed my eyes. My hands were shaking now, but it wasn't fear. It was something colder. Something that burned right through the shock. I drove back home as the sun came up. The house looked ordinary. Green lawn, white trim, the bird feeder Evelyn had hung last spring. Everything normal. Everything a lie. I stood in the living room and watched her sleep. Her face was slack, peaceful. She looked like the woman I'd married. But I'd seen the pictures. I knew what she'd been doing while I was unloading freight trucks and coming home with aching arms and stiff shoulders. I used my phone to call the county sheriff's office. "I need to report a fraud," I said. "My identity's been stolen. I think it's connected to a police officer, Victor Klein." The dispatcher put me through to a detective. I told him everything. The casket, the affidavit, the storage unit. He was quiet for a long time, then said, "Mr. Morrison, I need you to come in tomorrow morning. Bring everything you found." I said I would. I hung up and went back into the bedroom. Evelyn was awake now, sitting up against the headboard, watching me with those empty eyes. "Where did you go?" she asked. "Nowhere." "Frank, please, just..." I held up the storage unit key. "You want to tell me about Marcus Delaney?" Her face drained of what little color it had left. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. I didn't wait. I walked out of the bedroom, grabbed my keys, and drove to a motel on the edge of town. It was a cheap place, hourly rates, but I didn't care. I just needed to be somewhere she wasn't. That morning, I started building my case. Every receipt, every photo, every date on that ledger. I laid it out on the motel bed like a murder board. What I had was enough to start a fire. But I needed gasoline. I needed Evelyn to say it out loud. I texted her from a burner phone I bought at the gas station. "Meet me at the Lockwood unit. 8 p.m. Come alone, or I go to the police with everything I have." She replied in minutes. "Okay." I showed up at 7:45. I hid my car down the street and walked the rest of the way. The fluorescent light was still buzzing. I unlocked the door and waited in the dark. At 8:02, she walked in. Alone. No cops, no Klein, just Evelyn in her gardening jeans and a jacket she'd thrown on over a thin shirt. Her face was drawn. She looked old. "Frank," she said, "put the key down. Let's talk like people." "Like people," I laughed. "You had me sign my own death certificate." She flinched. "It wasn't supposed to go like that." Then how was it supposed to go? I stepped closer. Tell me. She took a shaky breath. I wanted out. I wanted a life that wasn't just freight yards and beer cans and you falling asleep on the couch at 8 o'clock. Marcus made me feel like someone. Klein saw a way to get money. It was just supposed to be a scam. A fake death, insurance payout, then we disappear. A fake death. I held up the photo of the burned car. That body was real, Evelyn. Somebody died. Somebody's family is missing him. She looked at the floor. I didn't know about that part until later. Who was it? She shook her head. Klein's brother. Derek. He owed money. He was already in trouble. Klein said it was convenient. I felt the floor tilt under me. Klein had burned his own brother to make me a ghost. And Evelyn had signed off on it. Tell me the rest, I said. Tell me everything. Right now? Or I swear I'll walk out that door and you'll never see me again. She looked up, and for the first time, something cracked in her expression. Maybe guilt. Maybe desperation. Maybe just the realization that she'd already lost. We had it all planned, she said. 6 months ago, Marcus got a contact at the coroner's office. A guy who would sign off on anything for $5,000. Klein found his brother's body. Derek had overdosed in a motel. No ID, no next of kin. He put your wallet on the body and set the car on fire. The coroner called it accidental. The insurance company was about to pay out. And then I came home. I said, and then you came home. Her voice cracked. You weren't supposed to come home, Frank. You were supposed to be at work until 10. I leaned against the wall and laughed. It wasn't funny. Nothing was funny. But the absurdity of it. My whole life burned down because I finished a shift early. Hit me like a freight train. You had 2 years to leave me. I said. You could have asked for a divorce. You could have just walked out. But you didn't. You sold me. She didn't deny it. She just stood there, arms wrapped around herself, shivering in the cold fluorescent light. I pulled out my phone and hit stop on the recording app. I have everything, I said. All of it. The pictures, the bank statements, your confession. Her eyes went wide. Frank, you can tell it all to the judge. I walked out of the storage unit and didn't look back. That my wife's family never liked me. That's the polite way to say it. The real way is they looked at me like I was a stain on their good name. I met Evelyn at a bar in Buckhead. I was working a side job as a bouncer. She was drinking wine with her sorority sisters. She had this laugh that cut through the smoke and noise, and I was hooked before I even knew her last name. Her father was a retired surgeon with a house on the lake and a handshake like a dead fish. The first time I met him, he looked at my calloused hands and said, "So you work with your hands?" Not a question, a verdict. Her mother spent the whole dinner talking about her neighbor's son who was finishing his residency. I sat there in my one good button-down, the one with the frayed cuff I tried to hide, and I smiled. I kept smiling that I'd never been good at college. Couldn't sit still, couldn't afford the tuition, couldn't get my head out of the practical world long enough to care about dead philosophers. So I worked. 16-hour days at the freight depot, unloading trailers, stacking pallets, breathing diesel fumes until my lungs ached. I came home with bruised knuckles and a paycheck that I handed over to Evelyn without question. Our money, I always said. It's our money. She took it. She took it all. Groceries. Mortgage. The new living room furniture she insisted on even when I told her we couldn't afford it. I worked double shifts so she could have that couch. I gave up my hunting trips so she could have that vacation to Cancun. The one she took without me to her friends had husbands with corner offices and company cars. I had a lunch pail and a magnetic sign on my truck that said Morrison Hauling. She'd smile at me across dinner tables, but her eyes drifted. I told myself it was just her nature. She'd always been dreamy, distant. I'd always been the one reaching. Our wedding was a small thing. Her father grudgingly paid for it, but he told me at the rehearsal that he expected me to step up. I didn't know what that meant at the time. Now I know it meant make money, shut up, and be grateful you got in the door. When our daughter was born, Emily, with her mother's eyes and my stubborn chin, I thought everything would change. I thought a baby would seal us, make us a family. But Emily grew up looking past me too. I'd come home from 12 hours on the floor, my ears ringing from the forklift beeps, and she'd be on her iPad, barely glancing up. I was the man who paid the bills and fixed the leaky faucet. I was the guy who remembered her favorite cereal and made sure she had lunch money. But I wasn't the guy she bragged about at school. Evelyn stopped sleeping in our bed 3 years into the marriage. She said I snored. I got a CPAP. She said I got up too early. I tried to be quieter. She said she just needed space. So I bought her a daybed for the sunroom and told her whatever made her comfortable. I made her coffee every morning. I brought it to her with 2 sugars and a splash of cream, just the way she liked it. She'd take it without looking up from her phone. I'd kiss her forehead and she'd flinch, just a fraction, but I felt it. I felt it every morning for 5 years. When her father had his stroke, I was the one who drove her to the hospital. I held her hand while she cried. I sat in the waiting room for 8 hours, eating vending machine peanuts and keeping track of all the paperwork. When her father died, I was the one who called the funeral home. I picked out the casket. I coordinated with the pastor. Evelyn was too devastated, her mother was too old, and her brother was too busy. So I did it. I did it all. And when the funeral was over, Evelyn kissed me on the cheek and said, "Thank you, Frank." That was the last time she touched me with anything like warmth. I told myself it was grief. I told myself she'd come back to me. I'd read articles about how women needed time after losing a parent. I gave her space. I gave her patience. I gave her everything I had. And when she needed to find herself by taking solo trips to the coast, I helped her pack, but she never asked about my day. Not once. I'd come home from a 14-hour shift, my hands cracked and bleeding from the freight straps, and she'd be watching TV. "Rough day," I'd say, hoping for some recognition. "Mine was okay," she'd answer. Always. Every time. I remembered the first Valentine's Day, I worked a double. I came home with roses and a card that had taken me 20 minutes to pick out. She'd gone to bed. The roses sat on the counter next to her empty coffee mug until they wilted. She threw them out a week later without a word that my clothes were always on the bottom shelf. Her clothes filled the walk-in. My boots lived in the garage. Her heels lined the hallway. I gave her the bigger bathroom, the better closet, the sunny side of the house. I took the drafty bedroom, the creaky chair, the first slice of cold pizza that she'd pushed toward me like a hand-me-down. She got a job at a boutique real estate office, selling houses to rich people. She was good at it. Charming. Easy smile. I went to her open houses and held her coat and handed out flyers. She introduced me as my husband, Frank, and then pivoted to a client. I was a footnote, a detail, a piece of furniture. Our 10th anniversary, I planned a trip to Savannah, booked the bed and breakfast, arranged time off work, bought a new shirt. She canceled the night before. "A work emergency," she said. I stayed home and watched baseball. She didn't come home until 2 in the morning. Smelled like perfume I didn't recognize. I didn't ask. I never asked. Because asking meant confronting the truth, and I'd spent 14 years pretending that if I just loved her enough, she'd see me. Really see me. I mowed the lawn. I changed the oil. I painted the fence. I showed up for every recital, every parent-teacher conference, every dinner with her parents where they looked through me like I was a window. And what did I get? A signature on a death certificate. A casket in my yard. And a wife who whispered, "Don't say a word, just sign." Like I was a stranger at her door. I sat in that motel room, staring at the photos spread across the bed. Evelyn with Marcus Delaney. Evelyn laughing at something he said. Evelyn holding his hand at a restaurant she'd told me was a client dinner. The woman in those pictures was not the woman I married. But maybe she was the woman she'd always been, and I'd just refused to see it. That I gave her 18 years of my life. I gave her my back, literally. I'd thrown it out twice, gone to physical therapy, injected it with cortisone. Also, I could keep working, keep providing, keep being the man who came home with a paycheck and no complaints. She never asked if I was tired. She never asked if my back still hurt. She never asked about anything except when the money was coming in. I remembered the night I told her about my promotion. I was going to be shift supervisor, a raise, better hours, a real office with a fan. I came home with the news, ready to celebrate. She was on the phone. She waved me off, kept talking. I ate dinner alone and poured myself a beer, and the promotion felt like nothing. Just more hours. More money she'd spend. I remembered the Christmas I bought her a pearl necklace with my bonus. She opened it, smiled that distant smile, said nice, and put it in her jewelry box. I never saw her wear it. I never asked why. I had given everything. Every dollar. Every hour. Every chance to make her happy. I'd held her hair back when she had the flu. I'd stayed up with our daughter when she had nightmares. I'd bailed her brother out of a DUI and never told her father because I didn't want to embarrass him. I'd carried every burden, swallowed every insult, fixed every broken thing in that house. And when my back gave out, When I couldn't stand up straight for 3 days, she brought me aspirin and said, "You should see a doctor." Then she left for work and forgot I existed. I sat on the edge of that motel bed, and I didn't cry. I didn't have tears left. I'd cried enough over the years. In the shower where she couldn't hear, in the truck on my way home, alone at the kitchen table after she'd gone to bed. I'd loved a woman who had never loved me back. I'd built a life on a foundation that was never there. And now she'd signed me into the ground that the photos burned in my mind. Her hand on his knee, his mouth near her ear, the receipts, the motels, the flights. She'd spent my money I bled for, on another man. She'd taken my years and turned them into a plan to erase me. I looked at myself in the smudged motel mirror, gray in my beard, lines around my eyes, a man who'd aged out of his own life. But I was still here. I was still breathing. And for the first time in 18 years, I wasn't going to give anything away. Not my name, not my money, not my dignity, not one more second of silence. I picked up the phone and called Detective Harland. "I'm ready," I said. "Let's burn them all." The recording sat on my phone like a loaded gun. Evelyn's voice, trembling and raw, confessing to everything. The plan, the money, the body, Klein, Marcus. I listened to it 3 times in my motel room, each pass making the anger settle into something harder than rage. Rage burns out. This was flint, cold and sharp and ready to strike. I knew what I had to do next. I had to wait. I had to let them think they'd won. For the next 2 weeks, I became a ghost. Harlan set me up with a safe house off a dirt road in the middle of nowhere. No address, no mail, just a cabin with a wood stove and a generator that hummed all night. I ate canned beans and slept on a cot and planned that I didn't call Evelyn. I didn't text. I didn't drive by the house. I let her wonder. I let her sit in the silence I'd left behind and wonder if I'd run, if I'd drowned myself in a river, if I'd crawled into a hole and died. I knew she was scared. I wanted her scared. Fear makes people stupid. Fear makes them reach out to the wrong people. Fear makes them dig their own graves. Day 1, Harlan called. "Klein is nervous. He pulled your file from the coroner's office. He's asking questions about your dental records." "Let him ask," I said. "He won't find anything. I've never been to a dentist in this county. My records are in a box in my basement, and I'm not there." Day 3, I checked my email on a burner laptop. The life insurance company had sent a notice. Claim pending. Beneficiary, Evelyn Morrison. They were one signature away from cutting a check. I smiled when I saw it. Let them think the money was coming. Let them get comfortable. I started following Marcus Delaney. Not in person, I was too visible. But online. Social media. Public records. His girlfriend, a woman I'd never heard of, posted pictures of them at a barbecue. He looked relaxed, like he hadn't just helped kill a man and steal a life. I saved every photo, every tag, every timestamp. Then I started following the money. The storage unit had given me a thread. I pulled credit reports, mine, Evelyn's, and a separate one for a business I'd never heard of called Morrison and Associates. Incorporated 2 years ago, Evelyn was listed as the sole officer. I checked the address. It was a P.O. box at a UPS store. I drove past it. The store was a strip mall hole in the wall. Inside, a clerk who didn't remember anyone. But the credit report gave me something else. A bank account connected to that business. A bank that had branches 3 counties over. I didn't go there. I called Harland. "I need a subpoena." He gave me a look through the phone. "You know that takes time." "I have time. They don't know I'm alive." The subpoena took 6 days. I spent those 6 days building a timeline. Every photo, every receipt, every bank statement. I pinned it to the cabin wall with thumbtacks. Red string crisscrossed like veins. Evelyn's face in the center. Klein's name in red. Marcus's name in blue. The body, Derek Klein, in black. I stood back and stared at it. A map of my own murder. On day 7, the bank records came through. The account had a balance of $200,000. Transfers from my paycheck, funneled weekly. Transfers from Evelyn's real estate commissions. And a wire from something called DKG Holdings. I ran it through an online search. DKG Holdings was a shell company with one name attached. Victor Klein. He'd siphoned his own brother's estate. The brother who died in that burned car. He'd taken Derek's small life insurance, Derek's house equity, Derek's motorcycle fund. All of it, folded into the pot. My pot. The pot they'd built from my blood. I stared at the number, and I didn't feel angry. I felt cold. The kind of cold that makes your hands steady and your mind sharp. I didn't want revenge. Revenge is emotional. I wanted justice. Justice is surgical. I called Harland again. I have enough for a warrant. But I need more. I need them to act. I need them to get greedy. What are you thinking? Let the insurance payment go through. Let them think they've won. Let them get the money and spend it. I want a paper trail so long they can't dig themselves out. Harland was quiet for a minute. That's risky. If they take that money and run, we might not recover it. They won't run. They're too comfortable. Klein has his hand in too many pockets. He's not going to walk away from his pension, his badge, his little empire. He's going to double down. And Evelyn's going to spend it. She always did. I was right. The insurance company processed the payment on day 10. $50,000, and Evelyn bought a new car. I saw it on a social media post from one of her friends, a photo of a white Mercedes with a bow on the hood. Her caption read, "New beginnings." I almost laughed out loud. New beginnings. She had no idea how true that was. I kept watching. Klein took a trip to Florida. He posted nothing, but his girlfriend did. A picture of his shoes on a beach, a margarita in the frame. He was celebrating. He thought the whole thing was done. He'd burned his brother, stolen my identity, committed insurance fraud, and he was drinking on a beach like a tourist. That made my job easier. Greedy people leave trails. Cocky people make mistakes. I bought a drone. A small one, cheap, from an electronics store in the next town. I flew it over my old house on a Tuesday afternoon. The white Mercedes sat in the driveway. There were flowers in the window boxes. Evelyn had never planted flowers. Marcus's pickup truck was parked around the corner, visible from the air. He was visiting my house, sleeping in my bed, sitting in my chair. I watched the footage on my laptop and felt nothing. No jealousy, no grief, just the click of a puzzle piece falling into place. I started sending letters. No return address. Plain envelopes. One to Klein's house, one to Evelyn, one to Marcus's apartment. Each letter had one line, typed in courier font. I know what you did. I sent the first one on a Wednesday, the second on Friday, the third on Sunday. I wanted to shake their confidence. I wanted them to look over their shoulders. I wanted Klein to wonder if his own department had found him out. I wanted Evelyn to wonder if I was dead or alive. I wanted Marcus to panic because panic makes people talk. On Monday, Marcus called Evelyn. I had a burner phone with a tap number. Harlan got me access to a passive listening device on Marcus's line. I heard the whole thing. She's sending letters, he said, his voice high and tight. Someone knows. Someone knows everything. Calm down. Evelyn's voice was flat, controlled. It's a bluff. Whoever it is, they want us to react. We don't react. She knows about my apartment. She sent it to my apartment. Then stay at a motel. Don't go home. Don't use your credit cards. Don't answer your phone. We wait. I listened and I smiled. She was smart. I'd always known that. But she wasn't smart enough. She'd forgotten one thing. I knew her. I knew her routines. I knew the way she ordered coffee, the way she tapped her nails when she was nervous, the way she always bought the same brand of peanut butter. I knew her better than she knew herself. And I knew she'd break before I did. I gave it one more week. I stayed in the cabin. I ate beans. I exercised. I ran every morning on the dirt road, pushing my legs until they burned. I needed to be sharp. I needed to be ready. Then I saw it. A text on my burner phone from an unknown number. It was a photo of my old house. The front door was open. A man stood on the porch, his face half hidden by a ball cap. But I knew the build. I knew the posture. It was Klein. He was checking the house. Looking for me. Looking for proof that I was still breathing. I sent that photo to Harland with a single word. Now. He called me back an hour later. We have enough. I've got warrants for 3 locations. Klein's house, your old place, and Marcus Delaney's apartment. We're moving tomorrow morning. Good, I said. But I didn't wait until morning. I drove into town at midnight. I parked 5 blocks from the house and walked the rest. The streets were dark, quiet. A dog barked somewhere, but it wasn't for me. I knew how to move quiet. I'd spent my life moving quiet through warehouses, stacking boxes without waking anyone. The front door was unlocked. I stepped inside. The house smelled like Evelyn's perfume and someone else's cologne. The living room was clean, too clean, like she'd been expecting visitors. The kitchen sink held 2 wine glasses. One had lipstick on the rim. I stood in the dark and looked around. Every surface held the memory of 18 years. But I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel anything. I felt like a detective in my own crime scene. I went to the basement. My old filing box was still there, behind the water heater. I pulled out my dental records and tucked them in my jacket. Klein wouldn't need them, but I wanted them safe. I went upstairs. The master bedroom door was closed. I opened it, just a crack. Evelyn was asleep. Alone. Marcus was gone. She lay on her side, her face peaceful, the same way she'd slept beside me for 14 years. I watched her for a long moment. A part of me wanted to wake her up, wanted to see the fear in her eyes when she realized I was real, I was alive, I was standing in her room. But I didn't. That wasn't the plan. I backed out, closed the door, and left the house the same way I came. Silent. Unseen. The next morning, the warrants hit. I wasn't there for the arrests. I didn't want to see it. But Harlan called me at 9:15. Got them. All three. Klein was at the station when we rolled up. Tried to run. Didn't get far. Marcus was at his girlfriend's house. Evelyn was at home, making coffee. How did she look? White as a sheet. She asked for you. Let her ask. She was crying, Frank. I didn't answer. I sat down on the cabin steps and looked at the pines. The sun was up. The air was cold. I could hear the generator humming in the background. That doesn't matter anymore, I said. What matters is what happens now. I started walking toward my truck, the same F-150 that had carried me home on the night everything broke. I opened the door and pulled out my phone. I sent one last message to Evelyn's numbered, "You can keep the coffee. I'll take everything else." Then I tossed the phone in the passenger seat and drove back to the city. I had a life to rebuild. And this time, I was building it alone. The morning of the arrests, I sat in a diner on the edge of town, nursing a cup of black coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. I didn't need caffeine. My blood was running hot enough. I just needed a place to sit while the world I'd known crumbled and rebuilt itself in a single sunrise. That my phone buzzed. Harlan. I let it ring twice before I picked up. "It's done," he said. "Klein's in custody. Marcus too. We picked up Evelyn at the house. She didn't fight." "Did she say anything?" "Asked if you were alive. Asked if you were there." "She looked." "I don't know, Frank." "She looked like she finally understood what she'd done." I didn't answer. I watched a waitress refill a trucker's coffee across the diner. Steam rose. The world kept turning. "What happens now?" I asked. "We process them. Formal charges. Fraud, conspiracy, insurance fraud. Klein's looking at murder charges too, for his brother. We found the accelerant canisters in his garage. We found the ledger with all the payments. We found your dental records in his desk. He was planning to destroy them. You're going to get everything back. Everything, most of it. The insurance money's frozen. The house is in your name. Evelyn never transferred it. That part was sloppy. We seized the Mercedes. The retirement accounts are recoverable. You'll be made whole, Frank. Financially, at least." I thanked him, hung up, and stared out the window. A whole man. Financially made whole. That was the phrase they used. But I knew better. You don't get whole from something like this. You get a new normal. You get a version of yourself that never quite fits the old clothes. I paid my check and drove to the county courthouse. I walked into the hallway where they were processing Evelyn's paperwork. She sat on a bench in a holding area, her hands cuffed in front of her, a sheriff's deputy standing nearby. She wore a gray sweatshirt I didn't recognize. Her hair was pulled back in a mess. No makeup, no jewelry. Just a woman who'd lost everything in a week. That she looked up when I walked in. Her eyes went wide. "Frank." I held up my hand. "Don't. I need to tell you. I don't care what you need to tell me. I spent 18 years caring about what you needed. That's done now. You made your choices. You signed my name on a death certificate. You took my money. You let Klein burn his own brother to cover your tracks." Her face crumpled. "I didn't know about Derek until after. Doesn't matter. You knew there was a body. You knew someone died. And you signed anyway. You looked me in the eye and told me to trust you. And you'd already emptied our accounts." She looked down at her cuffed hands. A tear dropped onto the gray fabric of her sweatshirt. "I loved you once, Frank. I really did. Once," I said. "That's the word you're looking for. Once. You loved me once, and then you decided I wasn't worth the effort. So you replaced me. You planned to erase me. And when I showed up at my own front door, you had the nerve to ask me to sign." She didn't say anything. She didn't have anything to say. I stood there and watched her cry, and I felt nothing. Not pity. Not grief. Not even satisfaction. Just a clean, empty space where my heart used to be when it came to her. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "You're going to plead guilty. You're going to cooperate with the prosecution against Klein. You're going to give back every penny you took, and you're going to sit in a cell and think about what you threw away. Not me. I was just a paycheck. You threw away your own soul. I turned and walked out. I didn't look back. The next few weeks were a blur of lawyers and paperwork and hearings. I sat in courtrooms and listened to attorneys talk about me like I was an exhibit. Exhibit A. Frank Morrison, living victim. They played the recording I'd made in the storage unit. Evelyn's voice filled the courtroom, confessing to everything. I watched her sit at the defense table, her shoulders hunched, her hair now gray at the temples. She looked like a stranger. She was a stranger. I'd never known her. I'd known the mask she wore. Klein was a different story. He sat at a separate table, his shaved head gleaming under the fluorescent lights. He didn't look nervous. He looked like a man who'd been caught, but didn't think he could be held. He had a slick lawyer in a $1,000 suit. They tried to argue that the insurance claim was Evelyn's idea, that Klein was just a friend who'd helped her out. I stood up in the middle of his testimony. The judge called for order. I asked to speak. The judge said no. I said I'd been dead, and now I was alive, and I'd like to tell the court what that was like. The judge let me speak. I walked to the witness stand and looked at Klein. He stared back. No expression. Do you know what it feels like? I said. To stand in your own yard and see a coffin with your name on it, to sign a paper that says you're dead while you're still breathing, to find out your own wife planned it all. And a police officer helped her. Klein's lawyer objected. The judge sustained it. But I kept going. You burned your own brother, Klein. Your flesh and blood. You set him on fire so you could take my life. And you'd do it again, wouldn't you? You'd do it to anyone, as long as the money was right. Klein's face didn't change, but his hands did. He folded them on the table, tight, white knuckles. I'd hit something. I'd hit the one nerve he still had. The judge told me to step down. I stepped down. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Klein was convicted on 32 counts. Fraud, identity theft, insurance fraud, conspiracy, and a special edition, second-degree murder for Derek Klein. The jury took 3 hours. When the verdict was read, Klein didn't flinch. He just looked at the ceiling, like he was counting the tiles. The judge sentenced him to 25 years. Evelyn got 8, with the possibility of parole in 5, because she cooperated and gave evidence against Klein. Marcus got 6. The paramedic who'd signed off on the phony death certificate lost his license and got 3 years. I sat through it all. Every day, every witness, every tear. And then, on the last day, I walked out of the courthouse into a warm spring afternoon. The sky was blue, the trees were blooming, and a television news crew asked for a comment. I told them no comment. I didn't want to be a victim on the evening news. I wanted to be a man who had survived. I went back to the cabin, not the safe house, a different one I'd bought with the first chunk of recovered money. Small, isolated, off the grid. I bought a dog, a mutt from the shelter, a brown-eyed thing with a crooked tail. I named him Lucky. I didn't think about Evelyn. I didn't think about Klein. I thought about the future. My back still hurt from the freight years. My hands still had calluses. But I had time. I had peace. I had a fire pit and a dog and a stack of books I'd never had a chance to read. One evening, sitting on the porch with Lucky at my feet, I got a letter. Handwritten, return address was the Women's Correctional Facility. I opened it. Dear Frank, I know you won't read this, but I need to write it. I was wrong. I was wrong about everything. I never saw you. I never saw what you gave me. I was too busy wanting more. I don't expect your forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just hope you find someone who sees you the way you always should have been seen. I hope you're happy. That's the only good thing I can give you now, the hope that you'll be happy. Evelyn. I read it twice. Then I folded it, walked to the fire pit, and dropped it into the flames. Lucky wagged his tail. The paper curled and blackened and turned to ash. I didn't write back. I didn't need to. Her words weren't for me. They were for her. They were the shape of her guilt, trying to find a home. But I wasn't her home. I wasn't anything to her anymore. And that was exactly how it should be. The money came back. All of it. The insurance company wrote a check directly to me. The house sold, and I used the proceeds to buy a small property near a lake. I started a handyman business. Small jobs, fixing fences, replacing roofs, building decks. I worked with my hands, but on my terms. No double shifts. No freight yard. No boss who didn't know my name. I found a rhythm. Morning coffee on the porch. Work until noon. Lunch with Lucky. Afternoon jobs, then home before dark. I cooked for myself. I cleaned my own house. I paid my bills on time and slept through the night without dreaming of coffins or cruisers. The world moved on. Klein was in a maximum security prison 2 states away. Marcus served his time and disappeared. I heard he moved to the coast and started over. Evelyn stayed in the system, working toward early release. I didn't check. I didn't care. I got a call from Harland about a year later. He'd been promoted. Wanted to thank me for helping break the corruption ring. I told him I didn't do it for the department. I did it because I had no choice. I know, he said. But you did something else, Frank. You showed the rest of us that a regular man can beat a system that's stacked against him. You stood up. You fought back. And you won. I didn't win, I said. I just didn't lose. Same thing, he said. Sometimes that's the same thing. I hung up and looked at the lake. The water was glassy, reflecting the sky. Lucky ran along the shore, chasing something invisible. I sat in my chair and breathed in the clean air. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt like a man who'd walked through a fire and come out the other side. Scorched, but standing. And that's the thing about being declared dead. You get a second chance. Not a do-over. Life doesn't give you do-overs. But a chance to build something new, on ground that's yours. Ground you didn't have to share with anyone who'd trade you for a payout. I built that. I built it with my own hands. The same hands that had signed a death certificate in a moment of exhaustion and fear. I rebuilt my name, my life, my future. And I did it without Evelyn, without Klein, without anyone who wanted me gone. I became someone I could respect. A man who could look in the mirror and see a survivor. And when I thought about the day I came home to police at my door, the casket on the lawn, my wife whispering, "Just sign," I didn't flinch. I remembered it. And I kept walking. Because the best revenge isn't getting even. It's outliving them. It's building something they can't touch. It's finding peace on your own terms. And that, right there, is worth more than any insurance policy could ever pay.